packet as background on how 2024 finished. Our dashboards for our monthly tracking are included in here, so another great year. And Craig is available to answer any questions about that. Page 3, I want to point this out specifically. This is something we haven't shown you necessarily recently, but this is sort of the actual cash in the golf course account. So what we're really tuning into here is the fluctuations and the amount of cash that needs to be held for just the cash flow of the golf course, right? So we take in money seasonally here and then we spend money, and you can kind of see that. But if you look month to month, you can also see us growing that cash as we continue to perform. Our head county CPA did an analysis for us and it sort of recommends, and you see this here, it's just a recommendation, that $750,000 of cash on hand at the end of October is about what it looks like we would need not to have a negative position in the golf course fund, so the golf course cash. Historically, the golf course has bled into the general fund's cash at certain points in the year because it needs $750 just to kind of ebb and flow. So we are finally at a point, we've been growing that cash reserve with our 2050 plan, where we are just about sort of having enough cash flow to maintain our own cash in the golf course enterprise. So that's going to be important as we talk about the 2050 plan and some of the projects that we see in debt versus non-debt. Is a lot of it kind of comes down to this: what is the committee's and the county board's appetite for how much cash do we want to be holding, right? Do we care, right? Is it okay to use county cash? Do we want to stay all within our own fund and our own business? And you'll see that. So we showed this to you, just kind of an informational item leading into the other items. Does anybody on the committee have any questions about anything in the golf quarterly report? Okay, are these questions for me or are they better asked?
Any of your comments you just made about the cash?
Yes. Yes.
Is it suitable to make a comment about that?
Yes.
I think I highly recommended to keep the cash flow separate, not get it mixed with county. Such that you've got a golf course account and you got the county account, and there the things shall meet, because that's the cleanest way in my mind to keep them separated, so you know exactly what's happening. It's clean, this is golf course, this is county, and they're kept separate. I mean, that's just my suggestion, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Krebs.
Yeah, Jamie, for the cash flow. 21 and 22 were pretty close, 3,000 difference in the swing. But 23, there was a larger jump. Is there a particular reason why there's such a change, and is that kind of larger number the number that's here to stay?
Yeah.
On memory, that was the year we raised prices and COVID outdoor numbers coincided.
We also, Dave ordered close to 100.
Craig, can you step up? So this feeds the live stream.
I think also a couple years ago, Dave Yankee ordered a bunch of equipment that didn't get delivered until this year. So 180 grand didn't come out on what we should have had for rough mowers and greens mowers. So yeah, when he
He's
ordered,
talking about the increase from $500,000 to 730.
if we didn't spend another 120,000 on equipment, it's gonna increase that number as well. But we increase rates every year, so I can't, without looking into it, tell you exactly why it went up that much, but every year we've been increasing and outperforming the budget. I think there is a little bit of delay with the equipment that we received that was supposed to be in hand 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. So did you follow what he said? So we had planned for about $200,000 of equipment in 2023. It didn't come until 2024. So that money never got spent, right? So there is a timing element that comes into play.
So, but that would be the delay of that equipment, like at a certain point, we're not gonna have those delays catching up with us. Would we really be dropping back then to the pre-COVID numbers? Because expenses are what they are, they're not really, I would think a lot of our expenses are pretty routine or regular. You know, just spitballing here, expenses throughout the cold season is probably gonna be more related to the routine maintenance that happens every year. Whether insurance premiums are renewing, stuff like that. I can see a 1 year spike, but I'm trying to figure out if that's the new normal.
So in the next, and it doesn't have it there, but in the 2050 plan, when we get there, you see the start of the 2024 cash. So I would argue that it is. Which we'll get to in the next item, so I mean, we can,
Sure, that's fine. I'll take a look at those then.
Okay, any more questions on the quarterly report? Okay. Then we will go ahead and move on to the 2050 plan.
okay, thank you. So what I'm gonna do is. Oops. Sorry. Okay, so. This is, and hopefully you've seen this before, so you're getting a little bit familiar with what these spreadsheets look like. But if you focus for a minute on 2025. That 849,679 at the beginning of the year. These cash numbers, these are the 2024 and 2025 cash estimates. The 2023 number in here does match what you just saw in that prior sheet. So you see, this is then kind of the long-term plan that's in front of you, and what it shows is kind of the beginning of the year. You see our adjustments, you see our capital, which goes out the door, which was detailed in the sheet prior, just so you can see what's all made up in that number. And then it kind of talks about the annual margin we are hoping for, that we plan for in our budget, the margin we're capturing to fund this, right? So in our operating budget, we show sort of a profit so that we have money to spend on capital, right? Cash coming back for our equipment purchases, that's what you see here. And then you kind of see the balance. And so what you have in scenario 2, which is what the recommended scenario is, and this feeds into the next item, which is the capital plan, is a scenario that shows in 2026, you see $1.1 million in capital expenses going out the door. That $1.1 million is extra high because compared to the years around it, because it includes a clubhouse expansion project.
Jamie, can you reference a page number, please?
I am on the big, long spreadsheet page.
Yeah, it'd be 11 hour. Okay.
Yeah, page
I
11.
thought, okay, I wasn't sure.
So this plan in here now shows, and the detail is provided in your packet, but it shows that clubhouse expansion project. And what we want to focus on today is there's really 3 variables in this plan related to this project. One is, what is the cost of this project? Which we're gonna come back to and talk a little bit about that. Right now, we have an $805,000 estimate. So costs could go up or down depending on how the design input meetings with stakeholders and Tuesday Night League members go, should we move forward funding this project. The second variable is what amount of money might we be able to rely on from the endowment fund? We have not yet asked the endowment fund for a contribution. They have indicated general support to hearing, but we do not have an amount. So that number could go up or down anywhere from $60,000 to, or this shows 175. The reason this shows 175 is because our finance people wanted to, and if you look in line 3, keep the cash number above 750. Right, so if we were to say get $75,000 less, now our cash shows 700. Right, so but that is a variable number. And then the third variable number you see in this recommended plan is a $400,000 debt proceed issuance over the next 5 years. And the reason why we are recommending debt, and I'm gonna go through the other scenarios for you. Is to keep that amount of cash above 750,000.
If you're going to discuss going through that, then I would favor to have a motion and a second on this so that it can be done through resolution. So before we continue discussion, I think it would probably be proper if we were gonna make any type of decision on that we motion. Take a motion and a second for this item. So, do I have a motion? Motion.
Not really sure what we'd be motioning.
Well, we're motioning on the fact that we're discussing the money. Whether or not we should finance. Or whether or not you're gonna have to resolve that.
Yes,
Could be a
so
resolution.
let me just clarify, so this 2050 plan. Is an overarching plan. When we approved it 2 years ago, we also showed that later out for an irrigation system. Right, what we are asking for, and this is true, Supervisor Kelly is correct. We are asking for a concept, and I say concept approval of the idea of issuing debt.
Also guidance.
This is more of if we think there's a problem with that, right? This is a good tool, and the CIP which follows, which also shows the debt, to vet that out before we bring forward debt resolutions or before we move into the next phase of the required approvals. The idea, all we're at right now is kind of the planning process of we are suggesting a possible use of debt here as it relates to the golf course business for cash flow purposes. So that is the concept idea. We still have a lot of work to do on the timing of when the county can issue debt, what that looks like, how we do that without impacting property taxes, what the amount might be, what the best staging of that work is. We have not done any of that and aren't prepared necessarily to tell you which year or exactly the amount, because we still don't have, remember those other two variables, the final project cost estimates or the endowment funding numbers, right? So right now, this is a very high level like concept, which is use debt. And I have two more scenarios, which I'll show you. One is no debt, and the other is what happens if the project costs go up a lot? What does that do to the numbers and how does that fluctuate, right? Because we can change any one of these variables in this conversation. So again, the 2050 plan is a planning tool. In the past, the committee has approved the planning tool, which then informs the capital improvement plan, which happens to be your next item. That's not ideal. Usually we try to do them in separate meetings, which then that potentially informs the CIP that goes to the county board. At that point, this project shows debt, right? So it's a concept. Then after that, the operating budgets and the debt resolutions actually approve any debt issuance, right? So right now, we're just but yes, we can take a motion on.
Well, and we won't need it if it's merely, this conversation is just guidance.
Yeah.
But if it's gonna lead to a resolution on whether or not we're gonna finance them, we do. So that was my concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we're not at that point now with the more information, we're not
Yes.
close
Well,
to
the-
moving this to the board,
The
so.
CIP, which is the next item,
Right,
goes to the executive committee and then the full county board.
right,
Right, and so if you look at that project, which we're gonna also talk about what that looks like right now, the specifics of that project and the concept plan we have. It is shown in there, again, with use of debt as a funding source. That doesn't mean we issued the debt, but you are providing guidance right now on whether or not that's something we wanna entertain for this project.
okay. Then
So-
we wouldn't need a resolution or a motion on that.
So I just kind of want to show you, the golf course is doing well. And can afford, we had a smaller golf course project. Originally, and we talked about, what does it look like if we dial back the project a little bit, move a couple things. Just pay for it out of our fund and try to do that, and endowment funding can fluctuate. And you can see if we kept the project cost around the same, I don't know if you guys can see this on my screen. You can see that? I mean, the bottom line is, if you look at that, from 26 to 27, the cash drops to $256,000. Then 274, then 368. So if we were to say, yes, we still wanna do this project, but we aren't comfortable with debt. Right, then staff would do the best we can to, probably a smaller scale project, probably some adjustments to some other things in the plan. Probably, we go back to the endowment committee and we toy with that number. If we change that, the cash gets a little better and we do the best we can. In doing that though, then the county should be prepared that because of our cash flow needs in the golf course, we may be dipping into what is typically general fund cash, right? With just for cash flow. We'd still be above the 0 mark holistically. We just would at certain times of the year need help with our cash flow. So that's an option. The other thing I want to show you is because we're still in kind of design modification review of what does this look like and how big of a project do we want to get. We did a scenario where we grow the project cost to 1.6 million. And then we issue, because again, remember the 3 variables, the total project cost, up, down, how much, the amount of debt, up, down, how much, and the amount of endowment funding. So you see then you see the debt spread across 7 years in order to kind of maintain that cash flow in the next few years. So I know that's a lot of information to take in. But back to kind of the overarching question here, we showed in your packet scenario 2, which is what we're recommending. But again, it is a concept only type plan, which shows that we would have a small borrow around $400,000 up or down, depending on the size and scope of the project. Kind of short term, just to help with cash. Really is what we would be looking at doing. So that's kind of the concept. And okay, we'll stop there and answer any questions you have.
Question? Chair recognizes Chairman Schleifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A while ago, you mentioned depending on what the Tuesday night league says, how does that play out? What's the?
So the preliminary conversation was that we have, and we're gonna show them to you in a minute, we have some sketches to get a budget of that 800 number of what does this kind of look like. But I think we felt like we would want to do with our architects, once we say, yeah, once we get approvals and you guys say, yep, we want to do this project. We would then go one step further in the design and engineering phase of the project and have maybe a little open house, right? Try to get any input from people, understand if we're meeting their needs, potentially have some more conversations with any other partners. And then that in theory might change that final number, right? But that's why what we're showing you here is that we can really afford to change that number, right? And then we potentially might change the endowment number and we potentially might change the debt number, right? We're juggling all within a small dollar amount window. So it's just kind of a concept at this point of, that's kind of would be the strategy going in, is we would, figure out exactly what the project looks like. Then we would figure out, okay, now how much money do we really need? The other key variable there, as always, is how quickly does the course open in 2025? How are we tracking? How do we finally finish 2024? That's kind of why we're looking at that going, we're really right on track with where we're expecting in terms of the finances.
But you still didn't answer what's
I
the
just think they're
significance?
a good group of stakeholders, right,
Okay.
that they might like to see.
It's the biggest league or
Right,
something like that.
check this out, what comments might you have, what considerations, so that nobody's surprised later and says, well, I wish you would have told us because we would have suggested this, or we would have volunteered to do this, or something of that nature. So a little bit more transparency into the process and decision making.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the committee on this?
The debt service the one in our packet is for 5 years, am I understanding that right? That's what the payments are for? So this is just a small 5-year balloon,
Yes,
okay?
which again is a concept.
What about the debt payments then, and starting in 2037 through 42?
What are those?
Yeah, what would those be?
So those had previously been shown in the plan and they coincide with the idea, again, a concept out in the future. That at some point in time, the golf course will need to replace the irrigation pipes. So when that need arises, we wanna keep it on the radar of the group. It is a maintenance item, it is out in the future, it will come at some point, again, carrying a large, about $2.5 million cost. So a large cash item, right? So again, kind of the same concept, at whatever, we pushed that back again as we updated the plan to coincide with when our depreciation for the building, which was 40 years, so we're about 25 years old right now. At the 40-year mark is when our depreciation from the initial build falls off, so it opens up some operating cash. In terms to pay that debt, so we wanted to kind of align that. But again, that irrigation piping might last 35 years, it might last 55 years. And we just replaced all of the controls, the technology part, the pumps have been replaced. So we're really talking about pipes, right, Greg? And we do patch repair them sometime, but it is a point that we just wanna keep on the radar so no one's ever surprised. Well, you didn't tell us we had $2.5 million in the future. Yes, at some point. The county board should be prepared to spend $2.5 million on irrigation pipes.
Those are our biggest long-term liability of infrastructure out there, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yes,
I'm not an accountant and I don't claim to be one. How does depreciation fit into the spreadsheet? Because in general, in government, depreciation is an imaginary thing in my world, I think. Like, but we're a separate entity per se here. What is depreciation really going towards, or what is that offsetting?
yeah, so it's kind of shown here as a revenue because you're right, it's funky accounting math. But in our operating budget, we account for a large expense for what we call depreciation. Right, so then that's not cash that goes out the door.
So where does that cash go?
Sits there and it shows up here as an offset to what we're spending.
So is that money really sitting in the general fund somewhere?
No, it's all in the golf enterprise fund. This is all golf course.
So like, I'll just grab 2025. Cash balance at the beginning of year is 849 and change.
Yeah.
But we got depreciation of 304,000. So of that 849. Is that 304 part of the 849, or is that in addition to the 849?
So those offsets, okay, so here's kind of the thought. You start with that cash amount, then under needs, that capital number, that's what we would say minus, we're spending that, right?
Okay, yep.
Then we add depreciation back in as a cash amount, because that amount is in our operating budget as an expense that is really there to save cash.
So that's money not spent yet.
Right, well, the 304,696 will match our 2025 operating expense depreciation line item. But it's a fake transaction, so the cash still stays there. Craig still brings in cash. Then I say I'm spending 305 on depreciation, but it's really stays in the bank. So that's what this is saying.
I get how they cancel each other out.
Yeah, yeah.
But ultimately, then like in the next year, where is that 304,000?
Well, we spent it here, right, on the 407 above it.
We can move on, I just don't.
Yeah,
I just
Yeah, I
don't-
would suggest
just
we can
don't
sit down with
understand
the accountants.
depreciation with
Yeah.
government in
It's-
general.
It's hard when we've tried to boil a spreadsheet into talking about cash And our budgeting people and our accounting people continually don't agree about how to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Supervisor Conrad?
Thank you. I just want to make a comment, to say if we would do a debt of 400,000, you have a little note down here, the interest. So the cost of the interest on 5 years financing is estimated to be 236,679. And the interest of that 400,000, or, I mean, because that would be a.
That note is old and it's from the original plan and it's showing that second debt issuance that's out there about the irrigation.
Okay, way out there, the 2.5. That
Yes.
would make more sense, because I didn't quite, I mean, that's a huge percentage.
Yeah, no, it's not that.
It wasn't making sense. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So how are we going to handle this then? Are we gonna have more discussion in the future as far as whether or not we want to finance or try to?
Well, in the next item, which is the capital improvement plan, we're gonna dive into the specifics of this $805,000 project a little bit. Right, and but here but that project sheet also shows that, right, so I think the question that the committee should be contemplating is. You know, are you comfortable with issuing debt for a project of that magnitude? If the answer is yes, then, you know, approve the concept plan as presented. If not, then I would suggest we could go back to, you know, version 1 or version 3. But it is kind of a concept idea at this point. You'll have a later chance to not want to issue debt. And we certainly might change, and that was the point of showing the scenarios too, depending on all of a sudden if we have more money. Right? If the finances change, the reason why we were recommending it was for the cash flow purposes, that when you bring an asset like building expansion, which we're gonna show you onto the clubhouse, the actual square footage addition itself is about $350,000. So that's a building, which makes sense to finance. And so that's, you know, it's kind of aligned with that concept.
So, excuse me, yeah, yes, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the big picture, when the decision is made on what to build and whether to borrow or not, that'll come back to this committee and then to the full board for approval, correct?
Borrowings do, yes, and
Yes.
it's also in the appropriated budget. But, I mean, again, these are the first steps, right, where this is where you say, I have a problem with this, right? That would be what we would be asking.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, and for me personally, I wouldn't have a problem with creating the debt for this project because you do have a golf course here that is positive cash flow. It can afford this project, and this project also does increase that cash flow with the golf simulators and all the rest of the things that it's incorporating. So I could actually see it as being a net positive even. But I do also understand the concept that, you know, if your cash position should change and should increase, it might be advantageous to save on the interest. But I think that for my purposes, I think to fall back to the conservative side is to probably plan for financing. And if we have the ability to do it without, then I would think that would be a bonus. You know, but a major project like this, I'd hate to try and do it out of pocket, because then you end up kind of, okay, well, let's cut this, let's not do that. If you're gonna do the project, do it right. The thing about government versus private sector here is that in the private sector, if I owned a golf course and I was looking to expand it and create new business, I would want to have amenities that people want. I would want to do it the right way the first time and not have to revisit it 3-4 times and do it kind of piecemeal. would wanna make sure that I put in something that's gonna be a good investment to make me a return on that investment. Does that make sense? So, if it came out that we got a more solid number, okay, it's gonna take $1.7 million to do it the right way. And turns out, wow, what a year we had. We had, 45 outings and all the rest of this stuff, and we had all this cash flow positive came in and we could afford to do it that way, great. But if we come up short on that, financing for me seems to be in order. So anybody else want to chime in on that?
I'll chime in.
Congrats.
I would, a short 5-year note doesn't seem unreasonable. The only thing is, I would say we would want to more approve the project. I would rather have the full county board make the decision if we want to go for outside funding or if the county wants to fund it with our general fund money. If we're gonna pay someone interest, we could pay a bank the interest, or we could pay the general fund money. So it really depends on the situation and or the environment of just the general fund at that time too.
Very good. Let's start with Supervisor Bradmore.
My question, what is the total cost of all this? Is there a number that you have? Cause I mean, I'm reading this the other day and it just, a total cost of the whole thing.
For the clubhouse
For all
expansion
this-
project.
Yeah, for all this project.
Yeah, so it would be the 73,000 shown in 2025 for engineering and design. And then it's estimated at 805. So we're talking about, what is that? 880,000 is what we currently have. But we did run a scenario where, what if this project cost grows to 1.1 after, tweaks are made to the initial design? Or what if there are pieces we could probably scale out of that? That number it is a 30% concept number, so it includes a contingency amount and a variety of other things in there. And we can talk about we will talk about the project in more detail. We could do it now, we can do it with the CIP, but we wanted these items together for that reason, because this is also, and you should, in full disclosure, not something that this committee or county has to do. You could just say, we do not want to do, let's be more conservative, we don't want to make that investment, and we cannot do a clubhouse expansion project. We are recommending that we do one because we want to continue to invest, we want to continue to protect our assets, we have some exciting, work happening and partnerships, and it's 25 years old, right? You don't want to, when you have something producing the way that our golf course is right now, you want to be making those next steps and those investments. But it is an option, right? This is definitely, we're talking about Wi-Fi in the house here, right? We're talking about expanding the clubhouse. And making an investment that has some ROI with regards to food and beverage revenue and simulator teaching space, which Craig can touch on when he goes through the project. But really it's about creating that ambiance and that space and kind of taking it, giving it the updates it needs. So when we talk about the chimney removal, right, it's just dated.
So another question to this. So I'm just on like a first page with the capital improvements for the golf course. Is that the golf course improvements or 2050? You have high priority, medium, high, but you would like to get it all done in one project. Is that what I'm trying to understand here? And
So
so it's all this together, is, the bill that you just gave me, let's just say it's 900,000, whatever, just an estimate. Does that include everything that you have on here, the high and the medium priority? In this,
So the 2050 plan you're approving, if you go to page, what page?
I'm on page 1.
Well, you're on the CIP, but if you go, I just want to explain how these are related. See the page I'm on right here, this golf course budget detail?
Okay, oh, that's.
Okay, and let's look at 2026, because that's in your CIP. That total 2026 number, 1.1110 million, it shows up. In the next item, there are 3 CIP projects. In 2026, and I know this because I checked it 3 times to make sure it equaled that $1.1 million. It's made up of, we separated it into 3 groups. The clubhouse expansion project, which you'll see in there for $805,000. And if it's a little higher, it's because we added the tables and chairs, so it's 805 plus 22, plus the beer keg coolers 13. So those 3 items are gonna make up the clubhouse expansion project. Then you're gonna see one that says vehicles and equipment. And that's gonna be the utility vehicle and the, like the vehicles on here, and then there's gonna be one that says maintenance equipment, and that's the pump blowers. Right, so those are 3 separate CIP projects, but this is the detail that shows up in the CIP. So whenever it's saying per the 2050 plan, right, it is these things in 2026.
Okay. Yes, I'm on
And
that
that's
page,
page 10.
page 10, okay.
For
Thanks.
us. Yeah.
Page. Thank you.
Yep,
Okay, Supervisor Conrad, you had something you wanted to ask?
Oh, I just wanted to, thank you, Chair, agree with Supervisor Krebs too. I'm comfortable with, right now approving that, 400 or the concept of that, borrowing that simple 400,000 over that 5 years and bring that forward to the board. And I do, agree with Jamie too, we want to continue to reinvesting into our golf course and keeping the people coming. We want to not just sustain it, but I believe it and growing it and improving it. And I appreciate that concept too of essentially, the key stakeholders or a focus group, of them having a voice because they're the individuals who are going to be investing and financially really sustaining our golf course. But
Thank you.
Mhm.
Supervisor Mary, you got anything to add? I really appreciate your thoughts on that.
I think you should do everything you can to maintain and update it when you have the money and the resources, which we do. Otherwise, a few years from now, we're gonna fall back into the same situation we discovered we had at AIS. I'm sorry, at Fair Park. 25 years and nothing was done. And now it's gonna cost us millions of dollars to update it. It's a lot cheaper to keep this upgrade it, improve it as we go along. Because someday down the line, if we don't, you're gonna be caught with a much larger bill. Granted, it'll be a different county board. But they're gonna look back on us and say, why didn't they do this when they had the chance? And I would just strongly encourage, let's keep modernizing, keep updating. And as Supervisor Conrad said, let's keep the people coming in. Let's continue this status as the #1 municipal golf course in the state.
Yeah, I think fresh is best. To kind of take a page of the mountain bike plan that we did. When I talked to the man designing the trails, like every year you want to see something new, something that draws you back. And I think that's the same with golf courses too. You want to see something fresh, something new, something that gets my interest. And I think we've done that a little bit. We've added the deck and we brought in having alcohol sales and we've done some changes with the clubhouse. This next step simulators are wild right now. They're really a hot item. They're popping up all over the place. And then the opportunity for lessons and things like that. I think it really kind of helps that golf course to maybe not have such wild cash fluctuations in the wintertime because, you have simulator leagues that go on and certainly I do know the place here in town that has simulators. They have cars in the parking lot all week and usually they were closed in the winter before. So
The only downside I see is no matter how much we spend on this, my game will not improve.
same. And yours beats mine, so.
He's never called us for a lesson.
there you go.
So I think consensus wise, we're not afraid to borrow some money, if that's needed. But certainly if there were an opportunity to save on interest, we're always a conservative bunch looking to save a buck where we can. I think, Mr. Krebs is correct on that. Hey, why pay a bank if we've got the ability to do it in-house? So.
Well, it's paid off early, allowed to, well, save on it.
A lot of times those bonds, they're usually not structured that way. I'm learning, so.
Okay, I think we have, I don't know if we need a motion on this plan.
No,
or not.
that we would.
Okay.
Well,
Let the record show they were all in agreement.
in agreement with like.
Conceptually.
Conceptually, yeah.
High level.
Right, and that really is the intent of that plan.
I heard that, I learned that word from you, so I'm just putting it back to it.
Moving on. Then we'll move on to the 2031 capital improvement.
Kayla is Aaron on, so. There he is.
There he is.
Whoa, big screen. Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me virtually. Sorry I couldn't be there for the fascinating discussion on depreciation. But I just wanted to, so departments are going to do the bulk of the presenting on CIP. I just wanted to introduce the concept and sort of give you a feel for where we are in our overall process. So in the month of January, departments were building out their plans. They were adding new projects and in a lot of cases updating costs for existing projects that were approved in prior versions of this plan. And so they were going back and adjusting for depreciation or inflation that has happened since then. So a lot of good work in January. Moving into this month, all the departments are presenting to their standing committees. So in terms of what we're looking for from you, not necessarily a motion, but really just a review of all those projects, asking some of the good questions you've already been asking about those projects. Asking questions about concepts, stuff on the project forms, and really just getting and providing some feedback about how those projects fit in with just our overall priorities in general, what you're seeing there and any thoughts there. Simultaneously this month, the budget team and the county executive team, we're also reviewing those projects, obviously, but we're taking your feedback and the exec is you know, working out in the community to gauge priorities as well. And really we're considering the overall funding need versus the overall funding available, right? You're reviewing a lot of enterprise funds, but the capital plan overall has a lot of sales tax in there as well. So looking at all those project requests in comparison to the sales tax available, things like that. So what you'll see then in the coming months is in March, the executive committee will see sort of the full package. There'll be a resolution to approve that package as well that comes with it. And so hopefully that gets approved then in March by executive committee, and then the full board will see that same thing in April. So I'm here, I'll be on to answer any questions, high level questions or anything like that, but I will then invite the departments up to present. Unless Jamie or anybody has a different idea, I'm assuming we can just go in the order of the packet. So there will be really three main presentations here. There'll be parks, golf, and while they are facilities projects, technically, we are bringing some of the fair park projects to this committee as well for review. So unless there are any questions now for me, we can have the departments start to come up. I'm probably going to mute my camera. I've got a 6-year-old running around here somewhere, so I don't want to be a distraction, but I will be available for those questions.
Okay, that sounds reasonable to me, but yeah, I'd like to go through them and starting at the beginning, start with the golf course. So you can see standing right there. And get through that first.
Yes, so we talked a little bit already about what you see here, the three projects that are detailed in the 2050 plan. Maintenance of vehicles is one, maintenance of other stuff, which is mostly pumps, and then we separated out for the purposes of transparency and also the size and scope of this project. The clubhouse expansion, so I'm gonna let Craig talk just a little bit about this project. But before I do, I wanna reiterate that this is a concept, right? Once approved, then we would go into design and engineering where we are talking about having some sort of a process whereby the plan might change. So it is an early version of what could be, kind of the concept that we're going in with.
All right, so what you're gonna see here is. The main part of this is going to be the simulator edition that is going to be on the west side of the clubhouse. For any of you that have been to the golf course, you walk in, there's a fireplace over on the west side of the dining area. All that is gonna be removed, so there are two glass doors, fireplace. That's all gonna get taken out. The sunroom right now is kind of what we use for our food during outings. People can walk in through one set of doors, walk around the fireplace, exit out. All that's gonna be a viewing area for now, the new simulator area. So no better way to advertise it than let everybody see it every time they walk in and out of the clubhouse. You'd get less eyes on it if the doors were closed and the fireplace is in the way, so we're gonna open that up. So it's just a more open concept. There will be two simulators in there. There'll be a dividing wall in between. As we mentioned, we do have a very substantial player development program out of Washington County, so the simulators. Not only will be used in the winter for simulator leagues, but there will be additional lessons, high schools. Will probably partner with for their spring boys golf, fall girls golf. Simulators nowadays don't just play golf on them, you play football on them, you play soccer on them, you play baseball on them. So, they're not necessarily just going to be a golf simulator, it's kind of gonna be an entertainment package, so people could have a rent and have a birthday party out there if they wanted to. As part of our player development, we're also a big club fitting facility, so there's a storage unit that will be set up next door. Right next to the simulators that will have all our state-of-the-art fitting equipment in there, so people can test the latest and greatest models. This is taking out where the asphalt is, so there's an additional path that goes a little bit to the west. The other big aspect of this is a little bit of shade covering that is gonna go on the patio. Probably the number one complaint is after spending 4 hours out on the golf course where we don't have many trees, is to then go sit on a patio that doesn't have any shade. So there will be 2 or 3 additional shade coverings on there. They're about 16 by 12. They are rated to endure hurricane force winds, so since it is very windy out in the county, we don't have any fear of these things blowing away. There's also a new roof in with this project. You will see on the north facing side, we do have some new fencing, and the last thing is just to the south, or I mean the east of the patio, you'll see a new set of stairs going in. So we deem this as a little bit of people being lazy, trying to get from the clubhouse to the driving range, and want to cut through the fescue hill. So we're gonna put a OSHA regulated stair level there so that nobody hurts themselves. But that is the scope of the project. Any questions about that? Yes.
Supervisor Krebs?
What would become the viewing area for the simulators? You said that's typically where you set up food for banquets and stuff, like, will that still?
That'll still be there,
Be able to
so
make it work?
kind of how you have the the viewing room, there will be a kind of countertop about this high that will divide where the actual simulators are, so you just kind of have a barrier not to walk into somebody swinging a golf club in front of you. But yes, we will still utilize that area as a place to set up the food, set up maybe raffle prizes, so it doesn't get so congested in the dining area. We're still gonna utilize that area quite often. The south facing wall of the sunroom right now is gonna get completely redone, newer windows, better insulation, because that room when the golf course was built, that was supposed to be an outdoor room. So really, if you go in there, rip up the carpet, there is a floor drain because it was an outside patio. And over the years, probably early 2000s, they just put some makeshift windows in there, so it's not an insulated room in any, at this point in time, so it gets very cold this time of year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Supervisor Conrad?
Thank you. The concept is removal of the fireplace. I think the fireplace is beautiful, but I understand your rationale, but it is also a very high cost. Did you try and play around with that a little bit, I'm assuming, to try and figure out how to keep it, but yet,
So I got to Washington County in 2013. The last time that fireplace got turned
Yeah,
on
does
was the winter of 2013.
okay, yeah, I was curious too. It's probably, is it even utilized?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just looks pretty. Okay. Thank you.
So structurally, it was very simple to take out and just run a beam across,
Oh,
just to
it
kind
is.
of open it up and make it more view. And it's not a, it's actually cheaper than I thought it was gonna be to rip that thing out.
Oh, all right.
Any other questions? Conceptually, when was the idea for this to start construction and what was the end?
Conceptually, I thought it was gonna be 26 to have it be done by the winter of 26.
So, I mean, throughout the golf season, or are we gonna be doing it?
Now, being on the west side of the golf, being on the west side of the clubhouse, it's not really going to interfere with the traffic of the golf carts. Then, 1 tee box and 10 tee box are east of the clubhouse, so it's on the opposite side, so. And we don't have a lot of traffic going around the clubhouse in that direction. We didn't during COVID because we had the drive-through window, so it was very nice, but. Nobody utilizes that side of the clubhouse, the practice course is over there, so. It'd be good to do it when the weather's nice and get it done as fast as possible, digging up all the asphalt. Pouring concrete up.
No, I'm excited to see this actually. So. All right. And the next item, are we going through? Any more of the golf course?
Nope, I think we moved to parks and we weren't going to walk through any park projects, but we did, again, very similar to the golf course. We left them in there with the maintenance projects per the 2050 plan we talked about last month. And then we did separate out the Glacier Hills Lakefront Development Project because it's just a sizable project with some different funding sources that we want to make sure we're calling attention to. So if you have any questions about any of those, we'd be happy to answer them.
Parks projects,
It's already discussed.
I think they're all.
They all follow the plan you adopted at the last meeting.
All right, then we move on to. Sorry, I'm not loading here. That's
Yeah,
the
me either,
problem.
yeah.
It's taking me.
Just get in the circle.
The Fair Park project would be next. And I do want to talk, and then I will turn facilities is also here because a number of these are their projects. They all are actually. I've just been helping a little bit with the Fair Park modernization project. So that is the one I want to talk a little bit about. And if you look at the page in your packet, which is page, hold on, I'm getting to it. There's 2 showing for this, one that just captures the debt payments. So finance put in kind of the debt on page. And then the subsequent page shows a project that has a total cost of $7 million. I don't know if you see that page. Do you see that page? Yes, this one that I have on the screen. So this page, and I put a handout on your desks that I just want to walk through very quickly. So this is a more detailed look at that $7 million, which is the borrowed money. So we already have this money, it's already in the account, this project is well underway. We are looking to go out for bid in June. With construction starting shortly after the Washington County Fair this year. So what you see, and if you look at this sheet in front of you, we've kind of broken it out, and you see the low range, which right now totals $6.8 million. What is missing from here is that we are still waiting on some numbers for, I believe, the Ziegler doors, which our facilities manager, Kara Herdrick, who is here, can talk a little bit about if needed. But so we do expect that to be, that low range number to be right hovering around that 7 million. If we were to do everything, we have this broken out into a base bid and alternates. The reason why I wanted to show you this detail is because there's a lot on here that we're hoping to accomplish with this money. But if you look to the next column, you see the high range. So there's some unknowns with equipment and tariffs and some of this bidding work that we're going to be doing. And we won't know until our bids come back exactly what the shortfall is or how that's gonna work. So we are planning, and this is the first time you're seeing it, but there's a prioritization conversation that potentially comes with which pieces of this project are we going to do now? Because we have the numbers, which do we want to wait? Do we potentially need additional funding? And what we will likely do is come back to this committee in May or June before the bids go out with kind of the final, here's what's going out to bid, right? To prep you because of the timing of this project and the construction award and the construction timetable. Kind of talking through the scenarios of how we might approach it if we were to come back with a funding need. In addition to this, the $6.7 million that we have available. Actually, I think we have about 6.8 available. Yeah, we have 7 million available. So again, this is kind of an art, right? We are looking at, when we adopted this debt, I don't know if you remember this, but we had an estimate on the project of about $7.5 million, and we issued $6.5 million of debt. So from the very start of this project, we were challenging the project budget. So I think the project team, which includes Kara Herdrick, and we have an IT, Mike Gitry from Information Technology, Stacy Holland, the CEO, we have, and the consultants that we've hired, and as well as Bill Poor from purchasing, has done a really good job trying to put together a bid package for this project. But we really won't know until we go out for bid. We are still waiting on the final credits from Focus on Energy as well. So those rebates could potentially help the total project cost. So this is just kind of an update, and if you have any thoughts on anything you see on this list now or between now and the next time we talk about this, of things that you think are maybe higher priority or lower priority than other things, that's the type of feedback we're looking for from this group. Because we may be in a position to make some decisions about what we do or don't want to do. So I will pick on, you see exterior lights on here. So this is your lights outside that allow you to light the building green for veterans, or either, you know, those are, I would say we have identified that as a, you know, probably the first thing that potentially would get cut out of this project. So internally, but then it's also, well, if you wanted to do that and bring in your own lights, it's gonna cost you a lot more in the long run, right? So we're into those kind of decisions about operations and maintenance and how we look at some of those things. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about this project, or I know Kara's here as well, if they're detailed facility project questions, but this just wanted to give you kind of a more detailed look into this project.
Questions from the committee? Supervisor Krebs?
So this is project number 006 at the top. If you would scroll up though to 023 project,
Yep.
that's also the modernization.
Yeah, so
Crossing my numbers here.
yeah, so that one, 023 shows the debt. That's what we're paying for the money we've received. In the three, you know,
The cost per year of 520 some thousand.
That's my understanding. If Aaron is still on, I would welcome him to jump on and opine on why they did it this way. Because I was only really dealing with the project where we spend the money we borrow.
Okay, I'm just looking through the notes in the description. Parentheses, it says 45.006 at the end. So then I wanted to confirm that those sheets were tied together. Why, I guess, I don't know why they would show them separately, but I want to make sure it's a project.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here too, that the capital financing is shown in there so that we show how we're using the sales tax to finance that debt service. And then the actual project is in there so that you can see those different variables and the cost considerations that Jamie's been articulating here. The debt service line in that project is funded with the other project, if that makes sense.
Yes. What was just slightly throwing me is in the 023 project, like our total expenditures is like 3.14. But then down below in 006 project, our expenditures were like 3.2. So like we're like
Yes,
100 off in there.
yeah,
100
so,
off.
and the difference there is likely, there was a while back, not a long time ago, but a little bit ago, and Kara, Scott, please jump in. But there was some funding authorized by the county board for LED lighting at Fair Park.
Okay.
And then there was a decision made to wait on executing that project and do the lighting all together. And so there is a small amount, it's about just over $100,000 that was put into this project fund in addition to the debt proceeds from a prior LED lighting project.
No, that's enough. I just was making sure I was thinking of the correct. These were,
Yes.
this project was from that funding.
Yes, and now there's interest income in this area, which is also making the numbers a little bit constantly changing.
Interest income to us because we have the money waiting now, ready to spend, but we haven't spent it now.
Yes,
Okay. So we're paying interest and receiving interest.
yes, and we're closely following the laws around that because you aren't allowed, there are very strict requirements about the timing of spending money. That our finance team is closely monitoring to make sure we're in compliance with all of our debt obligations.
Like the clock is ticking. Okay.
Any more questions on this modernization project?
I would just give the comment, I think ultimately really we'll have to just see where the chips fall once the bidding and stuff starts to occur to see where in that range we said. If there is more discussion needed or choices and guidance made on if needed at that time.
Yep,
Yeah, I think once you start getting around to bid acceptance or you seeing the bidding numbers coming in, you'll have a much better idea of where we're at. Just conceptually, you don't really wanna say, hey, let's get rid of this today, you know, there might not be any reason to.
Ideally, we do it all, but
Yeah. Very good.
okay, did you wanna add anything? I don't have. Are there any other questions on any of the other Fair Park projects?
I
Yeah.
had one. And I'm just trying to find where it was from looking before. Maybe it was the asphalt maintenance. Like one project is labeled crack filling, seal coating, striping, that says what it is. But a different area. It says. The description is replace lot, but then the justification is maintenance of the parking lots will ensure the longevity. So like, I'm trying to figure out like, is that like a full replacement versus just like the routine seal coating?
Yeah, we have a
maintenance?
combination, so there's a lot out there, and so they're all broken down into lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and we got them on a schedule. The engineer from the highway shop, works with us on that planning and he puts those numbers together. But we pretty much, we have a project out there just about every year. And it just depends on the needs of the particular lots and how they're wearing. So he does the assessment and then he puts the numbers together for us.
Okay.
So it kind of follows our roads plan, where, you know, this year we're chip sealing, this year we're striping, this year we're replacing, you know. And that, if you look at the whole lot, and road plan at the fair park, and if you know that the roads plan, they're side by side, you can pretty much put them together. Okay, the next item. There. Was the lots the last of it? I'm not getting,
After lots, there was,
oh, the Fair Park generator,
Generator.
that's just a replacement item, right?
what,
So,
how often is that used or is that required?
So it's so that particular generator is part of the county's emergency recovery plan, emergency management plan. For like incidents that may happen countywide. So the generator is getting close to the age of replacement. Yeah, look at the year, 2028 would put it, I can't remember the exact age, it's probably in that report, but
Installed in 07.
yeah, so it's getting up there in age and so we've just put it on the plan for replacement.
That's more for the emergency planning more than,
I mean, they
Day-to-day
use it, I mean, if they have a power outage or something out there, they would be using that generator. I don't have any records indicating what their typical power uptime is and how often that's run. But we just plan for the replacement, you know, they don't notify us when we have a power outage out there.
wonder why.
just Scott,
If I could, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes, actually, one of the uses was, for instance, when COVID was with the vaccines and having the refrigerators and freezers on backup power. But yes, those two buildings are meant for if there's a mass incident across the county or a small box or whatever you want to pick out, that those two buildings are to be able to utilize, either house people or to have people drive through or to walk through for different case scenarios. So we'll be also working with our emergency management coordinator to see if we can get a grant again to replace that generator.
that generator, does that have a lot of running hours on it?
My guess would be not a whole lot.
So does that, I mean, I suppose you have to keep it fresh because it's gotta be reliable. But then what does that go on Wisconsin surplus then? We recoup costs on that, or how does that work?
Most likely,
Yeah,
or
probably,
part of the contract as a vendor could, as part of this project, remove the old generator, make whatever money they want on that, and install the new one.
I mean, I gotta believe that's gotta have a certain amount of value still in it, despite its age. You know, I see those things, I mean, heck, a new one, $250,000 is the old one worth 20? You know, 10, I don't know, you know, would certainly be interested, because like I said, very, very low running hours. I wouldn't think you would have like a ton on there, but I do understand components do have to be replaced, so. All right, and Ziegler driveway, same thing, we don't need to talk about that, I suppose, unless there's any questions on any of the rest of this stuff. All right. Then moving on. The Hartford Jackson Interconnect.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to call your attention to this. So there is a natural gas pipeline being proposed to be constructed from Jackson to Hartford. And it is immediately adjacent to Washington County Fair Park. So the public comment period ends tomorrow. Wanted to make this committee aware and hear any feedback you have, just in case you have any on the project. But the Route A that they're showing here in yellow, which would be new easement through the backside of our private road at Fair Park, immediately behind kind of our stage, and this is the RV campground right here. And then they have a connector road here, and then they have this, Route B. We are planning to submit comments, that we prefer Route B, well, C and B, and that we prefer that they move those routes into the existing right of way, versus easements on the landowners. So we just kind of wanted to share that with you to make sure you're aware of the project in the public input period and ask this committee if they have any additional comments. There are also instructions in the packet, should anybody want to submit their own comments regarding this project, which the packet does include the full scope of the project, all the way across to Hartford. So happy to answer any questions if you have about this or hear any comments.
Okay, any questions from the committee?
Route A, you said is new? New, easement? That would have to be acquired?
Well, it's all new.
Oh, so
This is
whether
a
it's
new-
A, B, or C, none of this easement shown currently exists.
Right. That's my understanding. Yes, oh good, our highway commissioner is still here, because he was explaining the difference between an easement and moving it into the right of way right here.
I guess my only comment would be is, yeah, I would prefer B or C, anything that follows more of the perimeter versus going down cutting off, our property, essentially the two, because with purchasing that acreage to the north there, that'd just be one more issue in the future if there is any larger expansion and stuff, so that would be appreciated if we could keep it kind of more on the perimeters.
That's actually a great.
It's a private road today, but you can't put a building there in the future or whatever future use
Right.
occurs.
So Scott, you've looked at this. Always look to you for your opinion on these things.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did share my opinion with Jamie, and I did actually comment on this from the highway department standpoint, that we would also prefer to be in the right of way versus on the private land of Fair Park. Very fortunate up there that the sewer and water that extends out there is actually on private property along County Highway PV. So there is no sewer and water down the middle of PV, and if you're familiar with that area, it's a pretty wide road. Same with County Highway P, there's no sewer and water going right up the middle of Highway P, and so there's plenty of room there to put that. And I certainly would echo Supervisor Brett's comments of that location on the north property, typically not a north property line anymore, but that northern ring road, it is not ideal at all. If you want to put sewer up there or water up there for any purposes, just trying to cross that same gas pipeline would be quite the challenge, if not impossible. So never say never, but would make it potentially a challenge.
So you're saying in the expansion, I mean, should we, if we were to expand, that would be a serious hindrance?
Yes, I would say it'd be definitely a challenge to overcome.
Actually makes a lot of sense. Supervisor Conrad.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The private landowners impact for the B route, the B and C routes.
Yes, and that is, I think, too, why part of the recommendation is to move it into the right of way.
Yeah.
Because they would be otherwise taking an easement on the private property land, and that land right there, I mean, you're familiar with this area, it's where it could also impact future development, which is another reason why I certainly welcome any of the board members, especially those in this area, to make their own comments. I actually just noticed Linda is here from Cedar Lakes Conservation Foundation, and they have a number of properties across this route impacted by either the kind of the northern or the southern route. The way it's built, it could wiggle from like up to down to up to down to avoid certain pieces. But that's certainly, a conversation. I know they submitted comments regarding their route preferences as an organization, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share those with any county board supervisor that would be interested.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or input on this project?
Unless, we could. Would Linda be allowed to share now?
Oh,
Or is
yeah,
that
we
going
can
off?
bring her up. She'd like to share something.
Is that appropriate?
Somebody asked, I delivered.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey, everybody. So yes, Jamie is correct, the A route that's proposed, and she's right, it's got sort of different segments. Transverses a number of our properties, I think, depending on which segments they take, it's, 7 to 9 tax keys of properties that we own on the northern route. And on the southern route, it would go through 2 tax keys of a conservation easement. We did request that they use the right of way, as opposed to traversing one of our properties, because it's gonna be part of the Ice Age Trail here shortly. It's gonna have the Ice Age Trail going through it. It's in CRP through NRCS, it's ag land and it's wetland. So we did request, she's got our letter up right now. So, I'm glad that Jamie has brought this, to your attention. The northern route touches, as I said, about 7 to 9 tax keys. And the southern route touches 2 that are in a conservation easement farmland.
Supervisor Mary? Did you have a question? Okay,
All right, thank you for your insight.
anything more?
Nope, again, I'll just reiterate, the instructions to submit a public comment are in your packet. And I certainly encourage any of you that have an interest to do so and either reiterate some of the messages you've heard, other, adding value to those comments or your own comments that you have shared.
And I think seems like the general consensus of this is that we probably prefer the BC route to minimize the amount of call it damage, but interruption to the land.
Yes, and to clarify, our comment is actually restricted to the specific, they have it broken down into like sections. As to not comment necessarily on some of the other later parts of the route.
Right. And again, and I think this was a great point that, we had this discussion and Jamie first told me about this, is we're not proposing any of this. This isn't our project. This is Public Service Commission's project. We're just like any other landowner or anything else. So we're here to kind of give our input and that's it. So I'm hopeful we don't end up with pitchforks and torches coming at us because of any proposal that we've made. Because, we want as little interruption to our land as anybody else would. So I know that's your area, Supervisor Conrath out there, so I think that's important for your people to know that this is definitely not like a county plan. This is a Public Service Commission. So with that, we'll move on to Extension Office location discussion. And what do we got?
Sure, so we wanted to have a public opportunity to share with you the idea and concept and in the name of transparency, let the committee and the county board know that we are going to be signing or planning to sign a letter of intent to move UW Extension offices to Moraine Park Technical College. So what that means is once we sign the letter of intent, which again, to reiterate, the county board previously approved some funding for facility relocation of this group. With the changes to UW Extension. And talked about this as part of a resolution. So we have some kind of guiding documents already in place. But we will be signing this letter of intent, and once we do that, they will be then working on the build out of our space, which will be in the prior workforce development area, for those of you familiar with the campus. They will be working on doing that, and we will be making a commitment to, funding part of that and signing a lease, potentially with amortization in it for the cost of that build out. They have very reasonable rates. It seems like it's gonna be a really, really great partnership. We don't have any concerns about operating within the budgeted parameters that we have. But we will be doing that, and once we do that, they'll have our word that we plan to do that. So, we wanted to publicly say that and make sure that if anybody has any concerns, this would be kind of your last chance to bring them up or, request additional conversation at some point. But we will be moving forward with that letter of intent in the next 30 to 60 days.
Any questions from the committee or concerns? This would be the time to lay them out.
I would just add to it that on our campus remodeling committee, we've kind of already gone with the understanding that's where they're moving to, or as far as creating future office space here, we weren't really including that in that plan, so.
Yeah, so we have a couple moving parts here. We have the MOU with the county extension, which is that we're responsible to offer them office space and infrastructure for them to do their work. We also have the opportunity now to partner up with Kettle Moraine, which I think the technical college is, the new build out that they're doing there, very exciting, good place for them to be. So I think there's a lot of positives with this, and it's all part of our plan too, for our campus plan that, to get the PAC basically emptied out and try and at some point remove that building and maybe sell off the land. That's topic for another day, but it does kind of put us towards our goal of realizing our campus plan. So
Sounds good.
very good stuff.
Thank you.
And extension of the Washington County Park and Open Space Plan. Okay. I've already understood that the plan is fraught with problems.
Yes, thank you. So we're seeking the extension of our Park and Open Space Plan 2035, which was previously adopted in 2020. The reason we're coming to the committee with the extension of this plan is it's a requirement for one of our main grants that we're looking to secure for the Glacier Hills Lakefront Development Project. They require us to have an updated, what they call a corp plan, which our current Parks and Open Space Plan fits. However, we were required to extend that plan for another 5 years and have a resolution to do that. And then in addition, they required some, I guess you can call it, some added language in section 2 of this plan. You can see it here, sections 2.2 through 2.4 required some additional language, and we already had that pre-approved by the DNR. So they've seen this language and they already approved it. And so once this resolution passes, we'll be all set for our grant application. So really, I guess I'm just gonna take any questions at this time.
Well, before we move on to that, we need a motion and a second on this resolution. Motion by Supervisor Krebs, seconded by Supervisor Conrath. And questions?
Can you highlight the language that you've reviewed with the DNR already?
What needed to be updated, basically?
Yeah.
So if you look on, yes. Oh yeah, you have this, the chapter 2 inventory findings is in your packet.
Yep.
So if you go to the second page where it says page 2.2. And then the next 2 pages through page 2.4. Those were sections that were added. We had Adam from our community development program look through some of this. Basically what they wanted was updated data in here pertaining to the demographics in our county. So that's the bulk of the language that was updated in here. and then, trends and population densities and stuff like that.
Okay.
Basically, the DNR doesn't recognize it as current if it's not within 5 years old. So because we had done this in 2020, April of 2020, it expires by the DNR standards in April of 2025. And our grant application is due in May of 2025. So they would not recognize our data in what would have been the old plan as current, and therefore with our plan would have been eligible.
So pretty simply, it just updates our plan a little bit. It satisfies the state's needs, which then allows us to proceed and move forward with our grant application for Glacier Hills, right?
Yeah, so the grant we need this plan to apply for is the Knowles Nelson grant, which is essentially going to be the main grant funding source for the boardwalk section of that project, if you guys remembered. And really, it's the only grant that can be applied to that portion of the project, so.
Great. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in agreement, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And it passed.
Thank you.
All right. Next meeting is set for March 20th at 4:30 right here. Be there. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.